And good afternoon, everybody, or good day, wherever you're listening to this around the world. This is E. Marcel Portute, editor and publisher of the Sports Inquirer.net, and welcome to another edition of the Stagger Screen Podcast. Kind of an emergency one that we weren't expected to record for another few days, but with the signing of Kawhi Leonard and the transactions of NBA free agency, we got to record this show as soon as we can, and we were able to get it done, recording this on July 6th, 2019. Hope everyone is having a good day wherever you are listening to this show. Pretty straightforward what we're going to talk about today, NBA free agency. We'll get into Kawhi Leonard signing with the Clippers, Kevin Durant with the Nets, the winners and losers. If you're a Knicks or Oklahoma City fan, you're not going to want to hear what I have to say, unfortunately. But if you are a fan of some other squads, I might be a little more positive towards your future. But as always, before you do anything else, listen to the show first, please. After you listen to this show, head to the mothership, to sportsinquirer.net, premier site for news and notes in the world of sports, where you do a lot of other things besides NBA content. We do a lot of Major League Soccer. And we were just at Atlanta United practice a few days ago. Really, yesterday. Today's the 6th. Yeah, we went there yesterday. So we got information from manager Frank DeBoer, Julian Gressel, and some other players as well. So make sure you check that out. And we have MMA content on there, professional wrestling. We do another podcast called The Verbal Submission, where we discuss combat sports. So if your inkling is to listen to some content on WWE, AEW, New Japan, UFC. We'll do a show specifically for that as well called Verbal Submission, so make sure you check that out. But as I said, everything that we do, make sure to head to the site, and you can do some searches on there, get all of our archives, and that'll be good to go. Also, go to Twitter and Instagram on the Sports Inquirer, all one word. So Sports Inquirer, just put together. You subscribe to those. That will be a really good way to get all of our up-to-date items. And if you were on Twitter and Instagram, especially on Twitter, you saw my very fun evening last night with Atlanta United 2 here in Metro Atlanta, technically Kennesaw, which is north of Atlanta. But yeah, we had a rain delay and lightning delays, and the match started and it stopped. So we were in a soccer press box for over 2.5 hours of time and saw 10 minutes of soccer. So yeah, but good news is I was able to catch up on some items in the NBA and was able to outline some of the show. So that was a benefit from it, especially with the Summer League that took place. And we may touch on Summer League as well. I know we said it was going to be free agency focused, but we may touch on Summer League, especially with Zion Williamson and R.J. Barrett. But yeah, I was able to catch up on that. But yeah, if you follow my Twitter, you saw all of my fun activities in Kennesaw, Georgia. So also go to us on Facebook under the Sports Inquirer or Sports Inquirer. Head to either one of those pages and you'll get all of our up-to-date stuff. And finally, subscribe to us on YouTube and SoundCloud under the Sports Inquirer moniker or E. Marcel Portute. Just search either one and you'll be able to get all of our archived shows from the Sports Inquirer podcast or Sports Inquirer show that we do on all things sports. We also have the Verbal Submission that I mentioned earlier with the Combat Sports Podcast, Stagger Screen, which you're listening to now. We've done a few of them over the past few weeks. You get the archives of those past ones, and most importantly, future ones, so that whenever we do a new show, it'll pop right up on your updates, and you can listen to it anytime from there. So we're going to take our one and only break from the show. Maybe do another one, but this main break to get organized once again some more and just reshuffle some things. We are going to discuss NBA free agency, which is really it's turned the corner, and we're on the home stretch of it. But the main characters or the main players have signed or re-signed with their teams, and we'll break all of that down here on the Stagger Screen Podcast. All right, welcome back to the Stagger Screen Podcast. E. Marcel Portute here speaking with you. I was trying to figure out how to approach this podcast as far as do I do the winners and losers, the best signings, worst signings, the teams that spent their money the best and spent their money the worst. But I think you have one overarching theme throughout all of this, through this free agency period, is the NBA was the biggest winner. Now, circumstances allowed that to happen with the breakup of the Golden State Warriors, mainly Kevin Durant going to Brooklyn. And we'll get to Durant in a moment because that'll be my first talking point as far as the free agency breakdown. But over the past 4 years, the biggest issue with the NBA, there are a lot of issues in all sports, but lack of competition is a major one in all sports. When you feel that there's only one or two teams that can win a championship, that's a problem. The MLB deals with this in a little bit with the Yankees, Red Sox, and you want to throw the Dodgers in there, sure. But we've seen some other teams emerge over the past 10 years and find their way to championship glory. You have the NHL where I know Pittsburgh's had a run, winning a few Stanley Cups in the past 10 years, but it's been pretty wide open. We've seen Washington win the championship, St. Louis, the Blues, they earned their first Stanley Cup ever. We've seen some parity there and some interest. Now, you still have your marquee franchises, but in the end, you have clarity. And NFL, yes, the Patriots are the dynamic franchise in that league and maybe one of the most but one of the most impressive dynasties in all of sports, no matter what realm you're looking at. And Tom Brady and Bill Belichick may go down as the best quarterback and head coach in the history of that sport, respectively. But you still have that aspect of a team going from 4-12 to maybe making the playoffs, or a team like the Rams going from winning 9 to 10 games or winning Division to making the Super Bowl the next year. So you have that aspect of fans in those sports that we have a chance. Now, there's always downtrodden franchises in all of sports, in every league that you can think of. But the NBA has been in line with the aspect of their one franchise being the Golden State Warriors being the predetermined favorite by a pretty wide margin heading into its regular season. And the past 3 years have been really, I say 4, with the rise of Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green, that grouping. But then signing Kevin Durant 3 years ago around this time really took them to a level of, now you still have to go out there and still win the games, but in the end, you knew the talent would win out. In the NBA, it's about talent more than any other sport. You can draw up great schemes. You have great backdoor cuts and static screens, all the lame terms I use on my different platforms to describe basketball. You can draw up an excellent three-point play, and your zone defense could be on point, and you have a really good 1-3-1 press. But the reality is, if you have one or two players that can dominate the game and make a major impact, you're more likely to win the contest. I'm not saying that coaching and preparation and strategic aspects of the game do not exist. They're very important. But in reality is, especially in the NBA, if you have that top 5 or 10 player, you have a chance to win. And that's what we're seeing right now and we'll break it down. You can argue that between Brooklyn, the Clippers, and Philly maybe, that's maybe 6 out of the top 10 players in the league already with their teams. So when healthy. So when you break it down like that, you need to get the marquee talent to put yourself at a championship level. Now, you could be like some other franchises like Orlando and Sacramento and Charlotte and try to find your way into the postseason and be a playoff squad, and that's fine and good. But if your ultimate goal is to win a championship, you need that marquee guy. That's why there's been so much attention to Zion Williamson and the Summer League and having a 16,000-seat arena sold out for a glorified scrimmage. Now, you sign with the New Orleans Pelicans because Zion has potential to be one of those top 5, 10 players in the league. And with that leads to glory and championships and putting yourself in a spot to have your franchise at that high level. So when you look at the Brooklyn Nets, and we'll start with them, signing Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving to 4-year maximum deals. Well, I know they say they didn't sign for the max, but still, Kevin Durant 4 years, $164 million. Kyrie Irving 4 years, $141 million. And with the DeAndre Jordan, because he's their buddy, he got 4 years and $40 million. The Nets went from a nice story of making the playoffs with D'Angelo Russell, who bounced back and went to the Warriors this offseason. They went from being they might be a 6th, 7th seed in the East to when Durant comes back next year, being those 3 or 4 teams that can win an NBA championship just by that signing. Now, this upcoming year is going to be a little rough because you have Kyrie Irving by himself, and they have Doolittle, and they have the other players, and they have Allen, the nice post player, and DeAndre Jordan. They got to figure that situation out. And Durant will be coming back from a significant injury, so he's not going to come back and start averaging 30 again or putting up 40-point performances. So it's going to take time for him to come back even after the 2020 campaign. But when you sign those two guys and you have the solid infrastructure that the Nets have, you go from being a middling playoff team to a championship contender. So I don't care what happens. And Durant, he's going to have the best care, the best services. Even if he comes back at 80 to 90% of his peak, himself, that still makes him a top 10 player in the league. And Kyrie Irving, when his mind is right, and he has health issues himself with his knees, he's been dinged up, even though he played pretty well last year as far as staying on the court. You put those two guys together, you put yourself in championship contention. So you have to look at them as a winner. And then the Clippers. Now, this was a surprise move. Now, the Kawhi Leonard part, he signed 4 years, $141 million. That part wasn't a surprise for several reasons. One, he's been targeted by the Clippers for over a year, or more than a year. By the way, if you're writing, you should never say over or under. It should be more than or less than. So I got to carry that over to my journalistic aspects of recording a podcast. So he has been a target for the Clippers for more than a year. You look at Doc Rivers, the head coach, Lawrence Frank in the front office, Jerry West, the significant, maybe the best executive in the history of the NBA. We look at his tenure with the Lakers and his consulting with the Warriors, even some solid times with the Grizzlies, particularly drafting Paul Gasol and things like that. So you have Jerry West all in that infrastructure. Steve Ballmer, the richest owner in the NBA. You look at some of the other guys, we're talking about Mark Cuban, James Dolan, all that stuff. Yeah, Ballmer, he laughs at that. Now, those guys aren't struggling themselves, but Ballmer's richest man in the NBA, major player, not only in sports, but in technology. And so he brings a gravitas to the scenario. You look at Leonard, he's from California, from the Southern California area. Went to college at San Diego State. So he's very familiar with that city. And the obvious comparison would be, why doesn't he sign with the Lakers? Which I believe were a serious player in the decision process. But I think he's seen what the Lakers drama is with the front office. And we've gone down it before with the Buss family, the Jeannie Buss and Magic Johnson, and that whole, the Luke Walton firing and how messy that was. And the LeBron James factor, where I don't think it's LeBron's fault. He brings some of it onto himself, but toxic's a little extreme. It's not a toxic environment, but there's a lot of drama there. There's a lot of extra headaches you have to deal with. He goes to the Clippers. He'll have ownership of that franchise from a player perspective. Can lay his own path down the road. So him signing for that contract was not surprising at all. Him being able to secure Paul George through this scenario was very surprising. That part was impressive. And I know you're looking at Oklahoma City, and we'll get to what they got in the compensation for Paul George and what it means for their future. But draft picks and Gallinari and Alexander, very solid players. Paul George is a top 10, and this year put himself maybe in a top 5 conversation for best players in the league. And Kawhi Leonard, proven in San Antonio and definitely this year leading the Raptors to an NBA championship. Those are 2 top 5 players in the league merging together for at least the next 3 years, when Paul George has 3 years left on his contract and Kawhi with 4 years. They're opt-outs and all that jazz. But you can conceivably say 2 healthy guys in the prime of their careers, interchangeable parts, maybe 2 of the top perimeter defenders in the NBA, maybe the top 2 two-way players, offense and defense, in the entire league are merged together in a perfect time of their career, making solid money. Re-signed Patrick Beverley, 3 years, $40 million. Zubac, I love the post player, his prospects. So you got your guard situation and your two forwards or shooting guard spots taken care of. The Clippers put themselves in championship contention with that signing. Very shrewd move by Leonard. Now, him leaving Toronto is disappointing in a way. You would like to see him go back there and try to defend the championship with the Raptors. But you got to look at it this way as well. For all the love that the Raptors have received for winning the NBA championship, and I'm not putting a blimp or asterisk or trying to subside what they did, but you do have to acknowledge that the Warriors, if you have a healthy Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson through that entire NBA final, they put themselves in a much better position to win the championship. So he's looking at that scenario and saying that I need help. I need additional contributors to what I'm trying to do. And the signing and the acquisition of Paul George, in addition to Patrick Beverley, who's not an all-star but a solid player, and you got to figure there'll be some more things done with the Clippers. Very excellent move by them. And we'll go to Oklahoma City because it ties into what the acquisition was. They obtained Danilo Gallinari and Shai Alexander, as well as 4 unprotected first-round picks, 1 protected first-round pick, and 2 pick swaps. So in the end, you're looking at 7 draft picks and 2 players for Paul George. Is that a rich deal? That's a lot. And draft picks are important, and they do help your franchise move in a good direction if they're used properly. But you have to look at the Clippers' perspective. We have a window to win a championship within the next 2-3 years. We need to acquire George. Those draft picks, while they're fine and dandy, are probably going to be in the high lottery. Maybe even if you make the playoffs, you keep doing that, which the Clippers probably would have. They're going to be in the high teens, low 20s. Very rarely are you going to find a player of Paul George caliber to do that. And you win a championship, you throw it all out there, you got to do that move. For Oklahoma City, man, this is a rough move for them. And another star player leaves Russell Westbrook. We all know Westbrook's talent. He's been an all-star, been an MVP, multiple All-NBA appearances at first and second team. But you do have to look at his contract and the lack of flexibility that it allows. Now, they were able to get George in the system, and that's fine. But there's some big kickers coming into that contract. And that's what the Oklahoma City looks at also. While George in year 2, 3, and 4 of that contract, Westbrook's deal goes up and up and up, and this can be very tough to have flexibility. Now the Thunder have Westbrook and a bunch of draft picks, and they can kind of go from there. But in the short term, Oklahoma City's not a playoff team. Yet they've lost Kevin Durant, Victor Oladipo, Sabonis, and Paul George all within the past 5 years, playing alongside Russell Westbrook. That's not how you build a championship caliber team. With Westbrook, you're going to make the playoffs. He'll provide some highlights. He's a marquee guy that you can say he's on your squad, and that helps with marketing purposes. But as far as winning the championship, that's not what he's going to do for you. And this move shows even more that Oklahoma City, while they can't acknowledge it and say it, they made the wrong move keeping Russell Westbrook over Kevin Durant. That's one of those deals where you find a way to keep that guy. And I'm blanking right now with I'll say it right now. I know now. Yeah, now I don't know if this is completely true. And with reports and rumors and things like that are saying that one of the reasons the main reason Kevin Durant did not re-sign with the Golden State Warriors was because of Draymond Green. I don't believe that's completely true. I think there is a lot more to the story as far as Durant wanting to go to New York. He has established business ties in the New York area. You saw where when he got surgery in New York, a lot of that's tied into what he's been building in that area business-wise. So I don't know if it was necessarily his disagreements with Draymond Green, but if it came down to that, the Warriors would have traded Draymond Green as soon as the trade was able to be executed. Because while Green is a solid player, he's an all-star, he's probably going to be a Hall of Famer when you look at his resume. Kevin Durant's a top 10, 15 all-time talent. You don't let that go. And Oklahoma City let that go when they chose him over Westbrook. The James Harden deal, I'm not going to get on them too much with that, even though they could have had all three of those guys if they just gave Harden a few extra $1 million. If you look at the minutia of it, the reality is that Oklahoma City has tied itself to Westbrook, and they've struck out. That's the reality of what they're dealing with, and Paul George being traded to them just illuminates that even further. And then you go to the Knicks. You know, the thing about the Knicks is that in our last show, I highly recommend that you listen to it, because we broke down the dichotomy of the Knicks and the Nets and New York and the realities. What I've heard from a lot of older people, and I say older, it's not an insult. I'm in my late 30s, so I'm not a millennial. I don't know. We gotta figure out what technically millennials, what that terminology is, because I've been told I am a millennial, and then sometimes I'm told I'm not. I don't consider myself a millennial. I'm not a Gen Xer, I don't think either. But point is, I have age on me, but I'm not a senior citizen and things like that, which is fine. I want hopefully, Lord willing, I make the senior citizenship. But the point is, I hear a lot of media people talking about how the Knicks are still the Knicks and they're the marquee franchise, and the Nets are going nowhere, even with signing of Durant and Kyrie Irving. You got to look at it from a perspective of a player or of his fan, age 30 and under. Now, I know I can break down basketball for 60s and 70s because I'm a freak like that. I'm a basketball sports nut. But a lot of fans it's really like LeBron down as far as history, LeBron to current times. And Kobe gets a little bit of love. But even Michael Jordan, to a 30-year-old, they're very unfamiliar with it for the most part. There are exceptions. So this whole allure of the Knicks and playing in Madison Square Garden and being in the Mecca, and I'm from New York. I'm originally Brooklyn, born and raised. So I grew up all through the era. Patrick Ewing, Charles Oakley, making the finals in the 90s. I lived through all of that. 2 times in the 90s, 94 and 99. So I lived through all of that stuff. So I'm aware of the Knicks' history and its kind of role, where it lands in the New York sports landscape. But if you're looking towards the next 5-10 years, the Knicks aren't going away. They're still a marquee franchise. They're still one of the richest franchises in all of the NBA. So it's not going anywhere. But their stock and value is diminishing. And this whole aspect of it's New York, everyone's going to want to sign. They're playing a big market. Those days are done. You have players not only going to big, they're finding loopholes. Durant and Irving still get the New York benefit while playing for Brooklyn. Kawhi Leonard and Paul George get the benefit of playing in L.A. without having to go to the Lakers. These players realize that they're their own marketing machines, their own businesses. And the team they happen to play for, yeah, that helps. To say you're a Knick or a Laker. But when you're at the status of those guys, if you're a Clipper or a Net, that still means as much if you're in that same New York market. So the Knicks have to rebound and review what they've done. They didn't secure a major free agent. They weren't able to acquire Anthony Davis in a trade. They even weren't able to get Zion Williamson in the draft. Even though the draft and that lottery, you had no control over that necessarily. I mean, they tried their best to get the lowest odds. They ended up with R.J. Barrett, which is fine. But you look at their signings, Julius Randle, Reggie Bullock, Wayne Ellington, and I've heard some people try to spin that, and it's like, oh, that's good because they have players that contribute. I wouldn't want to sign Kevin Durant because he's injured. Yes, you do. You wanted him to sit out the year and come back just for box office purposes. Just for the fact that as we've gone over Durant and his talents with my Brooklyn breakdown, you need that type of player on your team if you want to compete at a championship level. So now the Knicks are going to go with Randall, Bullock, and Ellington. Hopefully Knox will be a big contributor. I said R.J. Barrett's on the team now, the recent draft pick. You just have to try to build through trades and youth improvements. Living down here in Atlanta, the Hawks for years would try to go with that angle of, hey, we're in Atlanta, we're a top 10 market. A lot of players like to live here. It's a great city to live in, and it's a good city to live in without question. we're going to attract all the free agents. That did not happen. And that's not knocking Atlanta. I mean, a little bit of a knock at Atlanta because it's just the way things are. The Knicks need to have that same and similar approach to their future rebuild or their current rebuild. The prospects of them waiting 2 years from now and having a new free agency class is in 2021. You can't do that. You have to work with what you have, and you have to build in that way. You kind of have to approach it as a medium to small franchise, even though you're New York and you are financially a big franchise. So with the lack of free agent acquisitions and their bad offseason, that's the way they have to approach it. And that's why I don't want to consider them they're a loser. Yes, they are a loser. But if it leads to a switch in approach to what they're trying to do, it can make them a winner in the long run. I look at Philadelphia. They re-signed Tobias Harris to 5 years, $180 million. And Al Horford, he goes to Philadelphia, 4 years, $109 million. Those are okay moves. That's a rich contract for Tobias Harris, especially that 5th year. He's a solid player. I like him. But if you're going to do that, I'd rather have Jimmy Butler and bring him back over Tobias Harris. And Horford, the first 2 years of that deal, I think will be okay. About $25 or $26 million per year. That's okay. But post players, when they age, and Horford starts slowing down last year. You saw a little bit of signs of it. But usually when it goes south for them, it goes bad quickly. Patrick Ewing playing with the Sonics and then the Magic. You saw Hakeem Olajuwon playing with the Raptors. When post players, look at Dwight Howard. He just got traded once again to the Memphis Grizzlies. I think his 6th or 7th NBA franchise. When you're a post player and you get into your 30s, that's not a good situation for you. So I think the first 2 years of that deal are going to be okay. But that the back end of that deal, I do not like. But with Philadelphia, the deal with them is those signings are good, but it comes down to Simmons and Embiid. If Ben Simmons cannot improve his jump shot or get a jump shot and have more versatility in his offensive game, if Joel Embiid cannot find a way to stay healthy, get in better condition, and become more focused on basketball, they're going to be a 2 or 3 seed in the East. They'll have a solid regular season, and then they'll find a way to lose in the postseason. That's what it comes down to. And I thought Jimmy Butler signing with them would have helped the cause. And Butler himself, he got a nice shiny deal with the Miami Heat, 4 years, $142 million. Look, he gets to play in Miami, South Beach, under a very good organization led by Pat Riley. No state tax in Florida. So he's going to get his money. He's going to get paid, but he's not going to win. I see them struggling to even be a playoff team, especially with they did sign Dragic back, which is okay. But you look at the East and the improvements, and he's going to put up numbers as well. He's going to get his shots up. You'll see him probably average a career high in scoring because he'll get that chance to be a major player. He'll probably be an all-star as well. But do you put them in the same class now as Milwaukee, Philadelphia? I'll throw Boston in there. And then Brooklyn, once they get Durant and Irving on the court at the same time, no. They're going to be a 5th or 6th seed at best, maybe even worse. Well, the East, we'll break down the East with my later deals. But Butler, he took the money, which is fine. But I don't, and it is right to do that. But he cannot say with a straight face that he wants to compete for a championship and be a winner like he did when he was in Minnesota and Philadelphia. You can't contradict yourself in that regard. You took the money. You got a solid contract. You set yourself up for the future financially. And in Miami, they're worse places to play. And it's a solid organization, too. They've had some questionable signings recently, but it's not the worst organization in the world. So it's okay signing, but I don't think he can play the championship card publicly anymore. Kemba Walker signing with the Boston Celtics, another 4-year, $141 million deal. And I look at this in the fact that Kyrie Irving and the Celtics, It did not work out. Is Irving a better player than Kemba Walker? He definitely is. That's just the reality of it. But basketball is a team sport, and that lineup in Boston, that grouping in Irving did not work out. Now, I think a lot is put on Irving. He's become the scapegoat for the struggles of Boston this year, but it goes beyond that. Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum have to make the step up in their career. They're not rookies anymore. When they first came into the league, they were feel-good guys. They're underdogs. The Celtics, when they are dealing with injuries, they need to put themselves in an all-star type position. And both of them, paydays are coming up soon for them. They need to do that. You have to get Gordon Hayward coming back from the leg injury, the broken leg. They suffered an opening 2 years ago. He now has a full NBA season with the Celtics playing. He has to make that step up and put himself back into all-star type of form. Brad Stevens, he did not do a very good job coaching. I'll give him credit. He acknowledged that when they lost to the Bucks in the playoffs. He said he'd had a bad year coaching. So that's a good sign that he at least acknowledges that, because he's been praised as the next Red Auerbach, Pat Riley, Phil Jackson of the future, just by what he's done to Celtics the first few years. He's a very good coach. I like his strategies. His demeanor, I think, works in Boston, but he has to do a better job of getting the players to mesh. And Kemba Walker, who had his breakout year this year, he's an all-star player. That contract is a lot of money, and it's different. Now, he's a New Yorker. He's from the Bronx. He played at Connecticut. He's used to pressure and won a national championship in college. But playing in Charlotte and Boston are different. So he has to make that adjustment and getting that extra attention. He put up very good numbers with the Hornets, but it's different playing in Boston. Expectations will be a lot higher. I did like their signing of Enes Kanter, 2 years and $10 million from Portland, and I'm surprised they did not re-sign him back in Portland. I know that they have McCollum and Lillard, and that's who are going to make the money for them. And then they brought in a Whiteside. I'm not so sure about that. Now, Whiteside is last year of his deal, so it's a little bit good in that regard that he'll be off the books. He's an expiring contract. But 2 years and $10 million, Kanter could have gotten, I thought, double digits per year. Just you seeing some of these other contracts guys are signing. But that's what the Celtics did, and they'll be a playoff team. And I think they could be a championship contender. But similar to Philadelphia, it all comes down to the incumbent players that are on that roster and making their step-ups as players if they're going to put themselves in championship contention. And then we swing back around to Golden State. We mentioned Golden State earlier with Durant, him leaving them for Brooklyn. I think Golden State's done okay as far as rebounding from it. Klay Thompson staying for the max, that was not a surprise. ACL injury, he's a tough guy. I think he'll come back and be a very good player. I think back to his solid form, so I'd have no worries there. Even though you got to figure he's getting older. Not that he's in his 37 or 38, but he's played a lot of games, a lot of mileage, all those championship runs. You have to wonder if his peak has already come, but that didn't surprise me at all. James Looney came back, 3 years, $15 million. That's another guy that I thought could get maybe $10+ million per year in the open market, but he stayed with them. That's a very good move. He brings a lot of energy, good post player, and they need some of that, especially if you have Cousins leaving the squad and Durant. They need that good post defender to be alongside Draymond Green to help out in that regard. So, solid move there. The trade for D'Angelo Russell and the subsequent signing of him for 4 years, $117 million. I did not like the trade at first when it was initially done, and I think I may have said that on our previous show. That was a lot of money for a player that I think is a solid guard, but not you're paying him franchise money with that. And plus, him and Steph Curry trying to work together in the same backcourt is a little iffy. But I thought about it, and some other people brought it up as well. I think he's a good chip to flip as far as this upcoming season. You got to figure Klay Thompson finds his way back into the lineup in the 2020 campaign. So while he works his way back into the rotation, he might not play this year as well. We've seen guys sit out entire years with ACL injuries, and it did happen very late in this previous season. So while he works his way back into the lineup, you have Curry and D'Angelo Russell working alongside each other. Russell's a lot taller than you think. He's 6'5". Defense is okay, but it's not like he's going to get abused by taller guards like Curry does. Now, he's not the defender that Klay Thompson is, but I think he'll be okay in that regard. Now, both of them are ball-centric guys, but we've seen Curry work around screens and work off the ball pretty well when Durant's had the ball in his hands and been like a point forward, even with Draymond Green. When he has the ball in the high post area and he distributes it. So Curry's used to playing off the ball. So if Russell becomes the main ball handler in the lineup when they're in the court at the same time, it might be okay for the time being. Now, is it a championship backcourt? I don't think so. I think you need Thompson to be back for that. And then if Thompson comes back in the 2020 season, you have those three guys. You play with three guards. You play with a really small lineup with Green and post player of the future. I guess Willie Cauley-Stein may be a signee for them. And you roll with that. And then Looney, he becomes maybe a starter as well. And there's always the prospect of Bogut maybe signing with them again. So the post player they got to work on. But I think they can still be a playoff team with that lineup. And if Thompson comes back and looks like he could be in form, Russell could be a solid trade chip for a team. That contract, while it's not the best, it's not the worst either. That's a tradable contract. And whoever trades for him will have multiple years of commitment in that salary range. So he could be a very solid trade commodity, whether you wait till unless he trade deadline or maybe next offseason, unless he becomes a total flop with the Warriors, which I highly doubt. That could be a solid option to move him to a franchise and get some assets back. So we'll see what happens with the Warriors, but obviously they are not the championship guarantee, or at least a top 2-3 team in the NBA anymore, and I think that opens it up for a lot of teams. And that kind of circles back to my initial point. We're going to talk about some secondary teams right now that in the previous era of the past 4 years, or definitely the last 3 years with Kevin Durant on the Warriors, I would say Utah Jazz, Denver Nuggets, Milwaukee Bucks, championship contenders? No. Especially the Western teams, you look at them and say, well, they might win a round or two in the playoffs, but then when they face the Warriors, it'll be over. Or if you look at the East, you'll be like, oh, okay, well, maybe if the Raptors or the Bucks or the Sixers they can maybe get to the finals. Once they face the Warriors in the NBA finals, they're not going to win that. The times have changed and times have turned, and it starts with several teams like the Bucks. They re-signed Kris Middleton to 5 years, $178 million. Also kept Brook Lopez for 4 years, $52 million. And Robin Lopez will be joining the team as well. So the Lopez twins will finally play on the same NBA team. First time they've played together since Stanford in college. That's a rich deal for Middleton. With that type of money, I'd rather see him kept Brodgon and let Middleton walk. But when you're Milwaukee and you have Giannis, 2 years left in his deal, and you struggle to acquire free agent talent, you would think that of all these free agents that we've mentioned, Milwaukee should have been on the list. They did not even get a look. Now, I know salary plays a factor in that, but you figure I get to play alongside Giannis, the reigning MVP, a man who is still working towards his prime and has another 3-4 years in the league that we may find hard to replicate in history of the NBA. You look at the numbers, it can get to that level, and yet they got not one free agent look. They re-signed guys, but no one was interested in going to them. So when you have a guy like Middleton and Brook Lopez, guys who work well within that system, you sign them. Even though it might be a little more than you want to sign for them, you make that deal. So Middleton stays with them and Lopez, and Milwaukee still puts himself in a top 2-3 position in the East, and if you're that makes you a championship contender. Now, speaking of the East, with Malcolm Brogdon, I say signed with Indiana, 4 years, $85 million, and Jeremy Lamb, a solid acquisition, 3 years and $36 million. Brogdon, one of the only players in NBA history to put together a 40, 50, 90 season. 40% shooting from the field, 40% from 3, 50% from the field, and 90% from the free throw line. He achieved that. Only a handful of guys, and his Hall of Famers are close to him, from Larry Bird to Curry to Mark Price, Dirk Nowitzki, I believe, have done in his career. Very, very rare distinction to do that, and he did that last year. And now he goes to Indiana, plays alongside Victor Oladipo whenever he gets back from his leg injury, and along with Lamb and Turner in the post. Indiana puts themselves in a very solid position in the Eastern Conference. But I think that would have really helped Milwaukee to keep him. But he signed a solid deal with the Pacers, and they put themselves in a very nice spot. So I like that signing. Utah signing Bojan Bogdanovic to a 4-year, $73 million deal. Now, that's where it hurts the Pacers losing him. Bogdanovic was a very solid contributor for the Pacers last year. Though the Jazz are not my favorite in the West, I wrote that note a few days ago before the Kawhi signing with the Clippers, and I definitely believe it now. But you got to like the team that they're putting together. Mike Conley, solid trade, getting him from the Grizzlies. Gives you some solid play from the point guard spot. They tried to do that with Ricky Rubio for the past few years. He was inconsistent in that spot. It was to the point where Donovan Mitchell, who should be an off guard or small forward, or playing off the ball and working his way in that way with the offensive system, he would have to take over point guard duties. That's not really his strength. So he put Conley there along with Mitchell. Rudy Gobert, who is, we talk about future Hall of Famers, Gobert is making his case, another decent player of the year mark. He is almost, and I don't remember who made this point, but his contributions defensively to a team is almost the equal of what a Kawhi Leonard or Kevin Durant would be on the offensive end. Just when he almost, and even a LeBron James level. I'm not saying he's that level of player, but you could put LeBron, Kawhi, and Durant, especially Durant and LeBron, their offensive skills on a team that's ranked in the 20s, and automatically you put them in the top 5. They're that lethal offensively. Gobert is the same deal. You put him on the worst defense in the NBA, and you need to make him top 10 just by his presence and what he does as far as dominating in the middle with block shots and rebounds and just defensive rotations. He does all of that. So you put him in that Jazz lineup, and they're a solid contender to be a top 3-4 team in the West. But they do lack that star power of certain teams, and we'll save the Lakers for last because they had their hands all through this free agency period. JJ Redick, 2 years, $26.5 million to the New Orleans. I want to call them New Orleans Hornets, to New Orleans Pelicans. I like that signing. They have a lineup or a group of a lot of guys, exception of Drew Holiday, that need to find their mark or find their way in the NBA. Brandon Ingram, Josh Hart, Lonzo Ball, all time with the Lakers, inconsistent careers. A lot of it had to do with injuries. But they have to find their way in the NBA because payday is coming for those guys very soon as well. And Zion Williamson, a rookie in the game. So there's a lot of youth on that roster, a lot of movable parts. So having Redick there as a solid pro will be a good signing by the Pelicans to have him in the locker room. And he's a solid shooter as well. I think when he'll get shots in, that'll be very good because you have Holiday and Ball, guys who can handle the ball, no pun intended with Lonzo. They're very good distributors. They can do that, but they need someone to get the ball to distribute passes too. And Redick could be a guy that can score for them and do that. So I like that deal. Franchises that I'm confused about, and these may be technically kind of the losers. I guess the Knicks and the Thunder, you consider kind of the losers of teams that are marquee and trying to do some things. Terry Rozier to Charlotte with his contract. I know the Hornets are trying to save face, and have a guy in the lineup after losing Kemba Walker, but Rozier is not the answer. You hate to say it, but teams like them, and then Vukovic signed with Orlando. He stayed with them 4 years, $100 million. You kind of hit rock bottom. You kind of rebuild from the ground up. And signing guys like Rozier and Vukovic to long-term expensive deals, you're putting yourself in the NBA purgatory. You might be good enough to get a 7 or 8 seed in the playoffs and lose in the first round pretty handily. So that means you're out of the lottery. Or if you miss the playoffs, you're a high lottery team, and you don't put yourself in that position to be in the top 3 or 4 to draft your franchise guy. So when I look at the moves of Charlotte and Orlando, those type of teams in that way. And then Sacramento, same way in the West. Harrison Barnes, 4 years, $88 million. Dewayne Dedmon, 3 years, $41 million. And the Kings were kind of a surprise franchise last year. They were competitive up until the final 4 weeks for a postseason spot. I like Buddy Hield. Obviously, Fox, the point guard out of Kentucky, very good player as well. But, man, you put yourself in a spot where you sign those guys, and congrats to them and getting that money, but they're in purgatory as well. Especially when you look at the West and the East, and there's still some moves to be made. The Kings aren't a playoff team, so now they're going to be a high lottery selection once again, and unless the lottery balls find a way to work towards your favor, they're not going to go anywhere as a franchise. They're going to stay in that 35 to 42, 43 win team, which some years gets you in the playoffs, most years doesn't, and you're stuck in purgatory, and that's not going to work out for you. So those moves are a little bit questionable, I think, as far as what you're trying to do with your franchise. And then finally the Lakers. I would have said they were big winners in this offseason by getting Anthony Davis and obviously getting LeBron James last year. You put yourself in a 2-3 year window to be a championship contender. And if they signed Kawhi, that would have been over the top as a champion. But he didn't sign with them. And now I put him in the same grouping as the Clippers, who I say right now, I'd rather have the Clippers roster than the Lakers roster. So the Clippers, I think, are better. I think you're looking at Milwaukee possibly being better than them. I think that Toronto, I know losing Kawhi hurts them. The point is, you look at the top 2 players, LeBron and Anthony Davis. If they're healthy and on point, 2 top 5 players. Some would say some say LeBron's still the best player in the league. Now I think there's been some guys who've stepped their games up, but LeBron's he's in that top 5. Anthony Davis, when he's on the court and he's playing and is solved his injury issues, he's a top 5 player as well. So you have 2 of the top 5 players in the league. You're not a scrub team. You're going to be a championship contender. But the rest of your roster does matter. And you have to look at LeBron entering another year in the NBA. He's played so many games, dealt with injuries, and I think he's going to come out really, really strong this upcoming year. I think his first 2-3 months are going to be maybe the best basketball that he's played, maybe since his Miami days, which is saying a lot. But I think you got to question if he's going to be able to make it through an entire season. And in the long run, especially when we get to the postseason, will he be able to handle all that? Anthony Davis, we've seen him put together solid regular seasons and become a first-team All-NBA, which is great. But we've not seen him make a long run in the postseason. How does he handle that? He's dealt with his different injuries as well. Can he put together a full season, postseason involved, in championship form? We've seen Kawhi do it this past year. We've seen Paul George make some long runs in the postseason. We've seen Doc Rivers win a championship with the Celtics, so he's a championship coach. You put that together, and you wonder, are they even the best team in the city? And Denver is a solid team. I think Jokic could be the MVP of the league this upcoming year. And you look at their roster and what they've done. I mentioned Utah. They have a chance to be in contention for a top seed in the West. So you put all of that stuff together, where do the Lakers land in the landscape? So I don't think they're a winner, but they're not the ultimate winner of the NBA offseason so far. So I think it's very intriguing that I'm saying off the top of my head, teams I could possibly see winning a championship and holding up a trophy. I think the Clippers can do it. I think the Lakers can. Denver, I think, has a chance to do it. Milwaukee, Philadelphia, even Boston, Lakers as well. That's just 6 or 7 teams I can actually sit down and make a solid case for you that this is a championship caliber team. Even Golden State, if you really want to, a lot of optimism. Clay and Steph will have to play at peak levels, and Russell have to make a step up as well. But maybe even they can make a run. Toronto, I know they lost Kawhi, but their infrastructure is very solid, and they'll try to figure things out. And they're used to playing without Kawhi for long stretches. Now, it took them to Kawhi to win that championship. But they've played without him before. They have solid Lowry and Siakam, and Gasol's back with them, Van Fleet. So Toronto's not going to go anywhere. Are they going to be a championship contender? I think they can be if things break right for them. So right now we're in a much better scenario than we were this time last year, where it's the Warriors and everyone else. And I think that's a good thing in the NBA as far as what the breakdown is. And we'll end with this point. Look, I want Zion Williamson to be a really good player, make his mark in the league, improve promotions, and everything along those lines. But let's take a deep breath. And I actually like what I saw from him, from a man who has not played hard basketball since March. So we're looking at 3 months, maybe about 3.5, of hard basketball in a competitive format. I think he did okay for that first performance in the Summer League game. We saw him move okay. He got some dunks in, went inside. So he did some good things. But if you think he's going to average 20 and 10 and dominate the league year one, give it some time. He has a lot to improve on. His conditioning, I think he'll get better. He'll get a full training camp in. You can tell he's not in shape, and that's fine. It's Summer League. He's working his way into shape and into peak form. But the proclamations of him that he's going to change the league and dominate and win MVPs, I hope it happens. But you got to give it time to develop and to grow. And if I were the Pelicans, they're talking about the minutes and limits. I don't only play maybe 10 minutes a game. What is the point of him playing? And I know the game was stopped last night because of the earthquake and that situation. But I was in the press box with somebody saying, play Zion 30, 35 minutes. I'm like, why? It's the preseason. It's not even preseason. It's Summer League. Let him get 10, 15 minutes in. Let him get to acclimate with the playbook and get used to being around some players in a professional situation. I get all of that. But the last thing you need is for him to hurt himself trying to go all out and dunk the ball and do 360s when the games honestly do not count, and they really don't. But I like what I saw from him. His size, I mean, he's a big guy. He can move okay, and his skill set is very good. But don't look at the Summer League as a good or a bad. I'm waiting to see all of the Fox Sports and the ESPN talk shows break down his performance and to give him the wow, he's going to be an NBA All-Star, a Hall of Famer, or he's going to be a terrible player and be out of the league in 4 years just off a Summer League performance, just from the limited minutes that we saw from him. Don't do that, listeners. Give it a better perspective. Take a deep breath and let what happens with him. But prospects are good. I think the league is healthier now with this off season. You have a little bit of balance and strength in what's going on because of circumstances, especially to go break up of Golden State with Durant and injuries. So I think the league is in a good spot, and I'm looking forward to what's coming up in the future. All right, thanks for listening to our show. As always, head to the sportsinquirer.net, premier site for news and notes in the world of sports. Go to us on Facebook under The Sports Inquirer, Twitter and Instagram under Sports Inquirer. That's all one word. And finally, subscribe to us on YouTube and SoundCloud under The Sports Inquirer. Until next time, good fight and good night.